Guys, how we doing? Welcome in, welcome in. We are live today to talk about Chelsea's current civil war and the Stamford Bridge news. Yes, it's been a weirdly quiet international break. I don't think anyone's too excited about the football. How are we all doing? Good to see some familiar faces in here today. Stephen, Dan, what are your thoughts on everything going on with Chelsea right now? I feel like the journalists almost waited until we got to this point of the no transfers, no football, and an international break that really doesn't mean anything to anyone to drop this kind of news. That's where my head is at with this. I feel like that's what they were waiting for. So let me know your thoughts, because ultimately Chelsea are, we are a club that are in probably not a crisis, but we are all over the place. I have no idea what is coming. To be honest with you, from the football side of things, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect from the ownership standpoint. What I do know is that Chelsea Football Club, since 2018, has never been short of drama, has it? Absolutely crazy. Javel, love to see you in here as well. Don't mind speaking to supporters of any club. So knowing you're a City fan, I appreciate that a lot. Guys, it's a difficult discussion to be had on the Civil War, because I know it's obviously been what's dominating our club's news for the last sort of week, but I've been doing a lot of research. I've been reading articles about both sides. I've been trying to find interviews on EGHBALI's side of things, but I have to say they're very limited. This is a guy that doesn't seem to speak too publicly. Todd BOEHLY, on the other hand, there's interviews out there, albeit they're not very in depth. He does say a few words, and he talks about his intentions and what he wants for the club. So yeah, it's a messy one, because I 100% think that this should just have been avoided when we sold the club. If we knew in hindsight what this situation was going to turn out to be, no one would have had either of these owners. They're not qualified to run a football club. It doesn't matter whether you're one side or the other, in my opinion. Both of them have made huge mistakes. They've both shown they're out of their depth. Way too many murmurings about so many things that the fans do not appreciate or do not want anywhere near their club. And that's the biggest problem for me, is that I don't feel confidence in either side here. I don't know if anyone else thinks that, but I just don't care, really. Whoever gets it, I don't think I have confidence yet from either to prove that this club's going to move in the right direction. Now, we can break it down a little bit and what I think each side's been sort of responsible for, but there's no proof to most of that. There really isn't. All of this mess was brought on by BOEHLY himself by picking the wrong partners in buying. Yeah. BOEHLY obviously felt that Clearlake were a good fit for him and what he wanted. And it's turned out that Clearlake thought that BOEHLY was a good fit for them and they wanted more control of the club. If BOEHLY wanted more control, he should have put up more money and bought more shares. It's as simple as that, because now he's got to do it. What I have to say is, let's start with BOEHLY, right? I've listened to interviews about him speaking about his previous sporting franchises with the Dodgers, with Ansel says BOEHLY out. I've listened. You wanted the Saudi Arabia ownership over American ownership. Well, look, we don't know what that would have looked like either. But right now, with how the last 3 years have been, I think it's safe to say that I probably wanted someone that cared about the club a little bit more. You know, I always felt with Roman that, as much as people said it was an asset and a way to sort of hide things for him and all those sort of conspiracy theories, if you like, around Chelsea, I always felt that Roman did care, and Roman knew that he wanted this team to win whatever happened, because it was like he portrayed an image and he took an interest into this. We haven't seen that yet under EGHBALI, Clearlake, Feliciano. We haven't seen it under Todd BOEHLY. It's just a bit of a mess. I think both are obviously so intent on making money out of this that ultimately the football side of things is going to suffer because of how intent they are on this being a business. Whereas Roman We know how when he sold the club, he didn't ask for the debt back. It wasn't a business for him. This was because he loved it. And do you know what? I'd take Roman Abramovich back in a heartbeat. Back in a heartbeat. And that's what Ansel is saying here. Guys, there's loads of you in here today. Make sure to smash the likes. If we can hit 30, that would be unbelievable. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 3,000 subs before Christmas. That would be absolutely quality if we could do that. We've been gaining slowly, so that would be fantastic. Look, we were going to start on BOEHLY, and I think there's just so many people that have got so many varying opinions. From what I've heard from doing my research with BOEHLY, is that Todd BOEHLY and him as himself and the clubs that he's got already, I say clubs, they're more like franchises in America, he's focused on obviously generating a huge amount of profit, but he's got a long plan. We're not talking about 5 years, 10 years. We're talking about a good amount of years that he recognizes that he could grow his sporting franchise by billions in like 10 years, 20 years. If they win, they become successful, and marketing wise grows them as a brand. And that's what I think BOEHLY thought he could do with Chelsea. And I think he thought would happen with football, because football is one of the biggest sports in the world, if not the biggest. And Chelsea is in the best league in the world, in probably the best city in that country in terms of London and its links to the world. So BOEHLY thought this was like an unbelievable opportunity. But what I will say is that realistically, Todd BOEHLY probably didn't have much of a grasp on football and what it meant to be part of owning a football team. Football isn't like the sports in America. There's a different level of connection. There's almost an amateurish sort of level behind football that made it what it was. And that was the beauty of it. And even if a club got massive, they became these giant businesses, but they weren't ran in the way that an American sporting franchise / business was ran. And that's what I think BOEHLY's had a hard time grasping, because every single decision in football, and the same with Clear Lake, is scrutinized, good or bad. Clubs absolutely look at this and say, fans look at these decisions under the microscope and assess every little detail. And that's where I think they've struggled, because they thought they'd get away with stuff, and they didn't think people would question signings, and they didn't think people would question moving stadium if it meant it was going to be bigger. Well, there are memories, and there are achievements, and there are connections for centuries to stadiums and players and things like that that have represented the club in these stadiums, and fans hold that dear and hold that close. And if you've got no connection to football, you don't understand that, because honestly, I'm not sure that happens in American sport to the extent it does in football. I'm just not sure it does, because I don't believe there's the jeopardy in American sports that you see in football. I just don't think there is. And I think that's why football is the global accessible game that it is. And American sports are big, realistically, in one country. And I think that's what they've struggled to understand. So he's made mistakes. Obviously, we know there's the iconic press conferences as well, when he said he wanted to play 4-4-3 and added the extra player. We've got a lot of people trying to make decisions, and I think that's something we'll get to when we speak about EGHBALI and his side, because I think EGHBALI and that side, they are the ones that have a lot of people doing, like, they've got too many people trying to do too much, I think. And I think that's a real issue. So Todd BOEHLY's ran sporting franchises in the past. He's had a good involvement with basketball teams. I think he tried the women's team of the, maybe like the LA, not the Lakers, because the women's team, I can't remember what they're called. I think there's an involvement in the Lakers with Todd BOEHLY and the LA Dodgers. And the LA Dodgers is really where he's got his main focus on with baseball. And that's a completely different sport. You could spend 4 hours in the stadium. You can chill. You can have a meeting. You can talk. And he said this himself, that football, he couldn't believe how locked in it was. 90 minutes, bang. Everyone's attention is on this game. There's no chatting about business meetings and like a chilled out atmosphere. No, this is a huge focus. And BOEHLY said himself that he wasn't quite aware that that's how it was. And then now he's also tried to sort of take a step back from where he was originally. And I think he basically tried to run before he could walk. And we'll talk about that. He put himself in the firing line at Chelsea. He basically made himself the sporting director, which we all know. And basically, I think Thomas Tuchel and a couple of others were telling him the type of players that we'd been linked with and the type of players we had our eyes on that we felt would be a good fit for the system. BOEHLY went out and got them. I don't believe BOEHLY was choosing players because I just don't think he knew who they were. I don't think BOEHLY knew much about Raheem Sterling. I don't think BOEHLY knew much about EGHBALI until obviously he'd signed him and started doing his research, but he didn't know about them 3 years ago. Todd BOEHLY probably didn't know Raheem Sterling at Liverpool, didn't know much about him. And I think he thought that he was signing unbelievable players. I think he was led to believe that they would propel his team instantly to the top again. Unfortunately, as we know in football, it doesn't always work out like that. Koulibaly was woeful. Raheem Sterling hasn't been great for Chelsea. And quite a few of the other players that he signed, Cucurella, they weren't great. And they were gambles, and he paid a lot of money for them. And it didn't work out for him. And I think then we obviously saw him go to the dressing room and we saw him sort of slate players and say, it's embarrassing, you should be better than this. But actually, it all stems back to the right players weren't signed in the first place and they weren't very good. And I think that is a real issue. I think that was the problem for Todd BOEHLY to start with, is that as a sporting director, he wasn't able, because he didn't have the knowledge, he wasn't able to challenge Tuchel. He wasn't able to challenge, maybe Marina was there. I'm trying to think. A couple of other people that were in there, maybe Petr Cech, although they might have left before he even got to work transfer-wise. But, the scouts that were there, he wasn't able to challenge them. They told him who they thought was a good fit. And he said, okay. And ultimately, he should have never put himself in that role. He learnt very quickly that he was out of his depth. That's where I think Clearlake were then able to use that as ammunition and say, look, you've gone after all these good players, spent a lot of money, and ultimately they haven't performed. We've got an idea that we've been looking at Brighton. Brighton spend pretty small amounts compared to Chelsea, win relatively the same amount of stuff, because I think BOEHLY's actually quoted for, EGHBALI's quoted for saying something like that. And we think we could do the same, probably on a slightly bigger level, hoping that we win more stuff. Football doesn't work like that either. You have to buy players that are of a certain level and with certain experience if you want to be winning the biggest trophies. And I think both parties have got good ideas, but they're both obviously trying to make money, and they both obviously are a little bit out of their depth. Now, EGHBALI and Clearlake seem to have established themselves with a bigger team. They got more people involved from Clearlake in the club. They got more people involved with sporting directorship roles. He's got 2 sporting directors, which I don't think you need. And I think this is the issue right now, is that it's not about picking sides, like Stephen says. All of this could have been avoided if the Czechs probably had gone into a little bit more depth about really what these guys' intentions were in terms of what they wanted for the club. Because I think that's really where the issue is. As soon as there's money involved and there's investors involved and these guys' sporting backgrounds aren't very well versed in terms of football, that's when I'd start to have issues. Well, we've seen, obviously, a lot of money be spent on players that quite simply aren't good enough. We've seen attempts at loopholes. We've seen way too much spending that meant we've had to sell so many of our assets, whether that's players, homegrown, not homegrown, and players, and property of the club. We've seen all of that have to be sold as a way to make up for the mistakes that have been made by signing so many different players. And all of this has a detrimental effect on Chelsea players, on Chelsea fans, and the club as a whole. And that is what we're seeing right now. And going into this season, we all felt that there was a bit of disparity between the recruitment that was happening and where Chelsea needed to go as a club. And we all saw that on deadline day, that whatever happened, Osimhen not arriving at Chelsea was a monumental failing on anyone's part involved of that side of the things at the club. The fact that we waited till that long to get the striker after a 4-window plan says to me that something went drastically wrong. And I think that's what we've seen. We've seen so many things go drastically wrong. Players, I've just seen someone say here, Enzo Fernandez is the ownership's biggest flop. 100%. Look how much money we've spent on Enzo Fernandez. Think of one, how many players you could have got for that amount, or two, the type of player you could have got for that amount if we acted in the right manner about spending that amount of money. We've done that a couple of times over with Mudryk, we paid way too much for. Lavia, for the amount of games that he's played, we've paid too much for. Casado, for the player that we've got, we've paid too much for. We've spent ludicrous amounts of money. And Koulibaly, Cucurella, Raheem Sterling was probably not too bad value at 40 million for the player we thought we could have got, but he didn't end up being that. We've bought a lot of players that have really failed to get to the level we thought they could get to at Chelsea, right? And that has ultimately caused more issues for these owners, because although they've tried to spend money, the recruitment's been shocking. Then we turn to the managers. They backed Tuchel, sacked him a week after deadline day. So they bought him all these players and he never got a chance to blend them into a team. And he believed they were the right players for his system. He'd sold him the club. Then they got him Potter, which showed they were so far out of their depth. They went and hired all these staff from Brighton. They started sacking groundsmen, chefs, physios, anyone that had been at the club under the previous ownership that might have thought that it wasn't heading in the right direction. Bang, out you go. See you later. We're not bothered about you. They removed basically every single player that has played under the previous ownership. They've removed any connection the majority of fans had to anything at the club under the previous ownership. The club feels completely different. They've killed Stamford Bridge. The West Stand is now Westview, and my gosh, that is a disaster. There's a family section that has been ripped up and made into the most expensive part of the ground you can sit in, behind the dugout club. They've removed every single bit of connection that the fans had to Chelsea Football Club, and they've also removed results. And now there's news breaking in the same week that they're talking about having this civil war because neither of them can align on what they want. There's news breaking that they also are still trying to leave Stamford Bridge. And you know what? At one point in my mind, I was like, if we move Stamford Bridge, look, we've had amazing memories there. But how cool would it be to have like this amazing ground that is like futuristic, state of the art, just 5 minutes up the road? We could live with that, I think, if we knew how good it was going to be. And we'd all love Stamford Bridge. But look at Arsenal. They moved on from Highbury, and albeit they haven't had the success that they had at Highbury, but they got a much better stadium for it. And the Emirates now obviously brings in money in terms of gigs, and it's good for the club to have that. But now with everything else, the only connection I have to Chelsea is Stamford Bridge. If we'd have been winning for the last 3 years and we'd signed good players and everything was rosy, and they said, look, we're going to move the stadium because we've exhausted all options at Stamford Bridge, and there just isn't the potential for this to work, right? I'll be like, it sucks. But I think as a fan base, maybe we could have understood because everything was okay. Everything's been rubbish. I'm not leaving Stamford Bridge. I'm not. I'd rather have Stamford Bridge forever, 40,000 seats, not change it, just do the maintenance that is needed, than honestly move, because that's the last bit of connection I have, that it feels familiar walking to Chelsea, walking out from Fulham Broadway up to the ground. That feels familiar to me. Everything else at Chelsea feels different. The players, everything, that all feels different, right? And I can't see that removing Stamford Bridge away from the fans as well is a good idea. I just don't see it as the right thing to do. And for me, as much as I can understand what a big, shiny new ground brings, that just isn't anything left that was Chelsea would have been gone. And that is a problem for me. And some people are saying it's fake news. Some people are saying they should have bought a different club. Do you know what? I hear all that. And I genuinely think that maybe they have bought the wrong club, because Chelsea was a difficult one. You know what this reminds? You know when Manchester United sacked Ferguson, and then everyone tried to follow in his footsteps, David Moyes, and it was the impossible job. Well, maybe as an owner, the impossible job was following the best owner that's ever existed in the Premier League. Roman Abramovich single-handedly changed what it was to be an owner of a Premier League football club. The amount of money he was prepared to spend, and out, he was willing to stop at nothing to get the success that he ended up getting. That was a new level of ownership. And then other owners came in, like Manchester City and everything like that. And that meant that the Premier League became this competitive super league and superpower that it now is. And Chelsea are falling away because the owners that came in have found it incredibly difficult to even get close. But they've ultimately ripped up a blueprint that they couldn't understand because they felt it was flawed, when actually, I don't think it was flawed. Maybe there were issues. I think really they just didn't understand football to understand that that's how football worked at the majority of clubs. And actually, to win that often generated financial gains. And don't get me wrong, transfers and outside aspects also generate financial gains. But there's nothing more unattractive than a messy club and a club that isn't winning and getting results on the pitch and a fan base that hates its ownership. Why on earth would any sponsor look at sponsoring Chelsea right now? And that's why they've struggled so much to attract front of shirt sponsors, because no sponsor wants to put themselves on the front of Chelsea's kit if they're legit, because they understand the turmoil at the club. They don't want their fan base, they don't want their sponsor associated with fans who are that don't like their owners and they don't like each other. They don't want that. Like, that's why we're sat here for a second season in a row, starting the season without a front of shirt sponsor and taking a huge amount of money as a sacrifice, because we haven't been able to attract one. When they said the best thing they'll be able to do is bring in global partners. So, look, they've both been a real issue, and you can sit here and pick sides. And I do have probably a preference, but I don't think it's rosy. I don't think it means everything will be fine. I really don't. But I think it could be better than what's around the corner. It's all about egos on who would run Chelsea FC better, when in reality, they have both utterly destroyed us. Stephen, you've summed up my point perfectly. They are on ego and financial driven decisions all the time. And that is the real problem, because Roman Abramovich understood that if he won consistently for 20 years, he would double what the club was worth, if not more. And look at how much it was sold for. That's more than what Roman bought it for, by loads, because he understood that winning builds attractiveness. Winning builds jealousy and envy, because it's so difficult to do as often as Chelsea did it. That then all of a sudden the brand becomes massive, because people want to be like Chelsea. People want to be like Manchester City. Every club in the league is trying to emulate what Manchester City are doing, because they all want the same amount of success. When actually it's about finding how to do it in your way and being a good thief and stealing ideas off of other clubs. But ultimately, yeah, this ownership in 3 years, it probably isn't, but it's probably not far off. It's definitely the 3rd season. It's been a disaster, guys. However you dress it up, it's a disaster. And for me, I don't want either of these people at my club. I really don't. But I'll tell you right now, we haven't competed for the league since 2017, but we have won the Champions League and other trophies since then. So, look, the league's incredibly difficult to compete for, but winning trophies across the board like we've done as a club is important. That's the main thing. To be winning trophies there or thereabouts across the board is what Chelsea are about. We know that Chelsea have won the league a few times, but what Chelsea had that no one else had is that we were capable of winning trophies across the board. We could go and win the Champions League twice. We could win the Europa League twice. We could win the Premier League. We could win the FA Cup. We could win the League Cup. We were capable of winning in any type of way, in any type of competition. And it doesn't matter that we haven't won the league since then, when we were able to win other stuff. But now we're not in a position that we're going to be able to win other stuff. I don't think personally, with the recruitment in terms of playing staff, managerial appointments, and the disarray of the whole club, that ultimately that then will become a problem. That it won't be long. We'll be looking and we haven't won the league in 10 years. The solution, look, don't get me wrong. When we signed Lukaku, when we had Tuchel, I genuinely thought, and I know I wasn't the only person, by the way, I genuinely thought that Lukaku was the answer. And we all did. We thought, this is the man, £100 million striker. And it started off amazingly. And we looked like we were going to win the league. And then that relationship with him and Tuchel just went, gone. There it goes. That's 5 seasons that we will not be able to sign another world-class striker because of the money that is being outlaid on this bloke. It's 300 grand a week. It's 100 million pounds. We can't spend that money again because we've got him. He either needs to work or we sell him. Well, we weren't able to do either for like 4 years. What a mess. It was the ownership just fell apart. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure to smash a like. We're trying to get 25 likes on today's stream. There's plenty of you in here. You're all able to just smash the like. And if you haven't already, subscribe. We are on the road to 3,000 subs before Christmas. It's just been an absolute mess, if we're being honest, this whole ownership. But what I will say, and it's important to say, is that there's definitely one side I would favour. And that's the Todd BOEHLY side. And I know he's made mistakes, but I think that was always going to happen. He was coming into a new world. He didn't understand football. Well, he learns quick, because if he didn't learn quick, he wouldn't be a billionaire. So I think he probably now understands a little bit more about what is happening in the world of football. He understands how quickly things can change. He understands that a little bit of success shuts up all the moaning. He saw that under Poch. He saw that the turnaround straight away, everyone that was like, Poch out, that went very quiet very quickly. I was one of those, because actually Pochettino started basically suggesting that the evidence was there, that he had learned how to generate the best for this team in terms of results, how they were playing. And ultimately, yes, he'd made previous errors, but he got there in the end. Pochettino wasn't the right appointment in my eyes. And I think that was the issue the whole way through, that no matter what happened, if he didn't win from the get-go, the fans wouldn't like him. That's what happened. He didn't win. The pressure was too much because he's not a serial winner. And he found it very difficult. Eventually, when he got his team into a certain way of playing, no one liked it. And then these sporting directors that they've hired to hire Pochettino have released this 18-page breakdown to suggest that he's the wrong choice. They made the choice. Why are they not the ones who are having an 18-page repertoire written on them to suggest that they're the wrong people for the job? Because ultimately, I think that is also an issue, is that ultimately, whoever's made the decision, Clearlake or Todd BOEHLY, have decided that Whit Stanley and Stewart are good enough to be sporting directors to run this football club's sporting side. They are not in a position to decide those people are good enough to do that job, because they don't understand the sport that they're in. That's another issue, right? And ultimately, what the sporting directors have done in this amount of time has only made it harder for Chelsea fans to accept either side of the civil war, because they have made monumental F-ups. I can tell you that. Why is it all happening? There's one word, Ben. It's money. There's one word. BOEHLY on the helm gives us Osman. Right, so hear me out on this. They have, Dan, a lot of lies, and a lot of people not saying what needs to be said, not addressing the fans when there's a lot of disarray. Like right now, neither side's coming out and speaking, and with all this news breaking, they have to. EGHBALI or Todd BOEHLY needs to be coming out and saying, look, this is true. We're not happy. We're trying to raise funds, or we've got the funds, and we've approached EGHBALI, or I've approached Todd, and we're trying to buy out his. They need to come out and actually put this on the table, because at the moment it's all just murmurings. But The reason I side with Todd BOEHLY on this, and I do that with a lot of reluctancy, because Todd BOEHLY hasn't done enough for me. But I believe that with time, he would be the better person for the job. He understands that bringing in players of a better level, a higher quality, adds something to the club. He's done it in different sport, but with baseball, he apparently signed the best player in the world. I don't follow baseball, can't give my opinion on that one, but he absolutely shot revenue through the roof, made the team more competitive, got the team's name everywhere. And ultimately, that side of things ticked every single approach Todd BOEHLY wants: marketing, sporting, and business, right? He and the attractiveness of the brand shot up because of that, because of how good he was and the fact that everyone was talking about it. Okay, I don't think they've won as much as they thought they might have, but he probably understands now that if you had a second person of that caliber, you give yourself a real chance. That's Real Madrid's model, right? Real Madrid understand that they are the biggest club in the world because they continuously add the best players and winners to their squad and go and keep it very, very simple, and are now the biggest brand in world football. There's no doubt about it, right? So Todd BOEHLY, for me, understands that that works in baseball. I think he now understands that it translates to football. And I think that as soon as the Osimhen deal didn't happen, this relationship hit breaking point. I think Todd BOEHLY's either like, I'm going or I'm buying it all. Todd BOEHLY, for me, understands how a sporting, I don't want to call it a sporting brand works. And Chelsea are going to become that because of how global football is. Every brand is going to become, or every football club is going to become a global brand within time because of the money that's here. There are too many businessmen that can't resist the opportunity, and football is screaming out for that opportunity to be taken. Do I think it's the right thing? No. Do I think that football should move in that direction? Not really, but I think it's inevitable. I like football for what it was, when it was a bit amateurish and random things happened. Clubs paid stupid money, clubs paid not a lot, and you got mavericks and you got wonderful players, you got rubbish players, you got flops. I liked football when it was like that, but now it's all too much statistics, too much data-driven decisions, and I don't like it as much. But it's going that way and it's inevitable. And do you know what? If Chelsea are to become one of the biggest global brands in world football under Todd BOEHLY, we get an amazing stadium, whether it's at Stamford Bridge or we move, and the whole squad is capable of achieving what Chelsea should be achieving as honours. I could deal with that. But it needs to settle down first, and we need to get back to winning ways. And if we're winning and the squad is built enough to a level that we can compete season in, season out, and then the line through the club is simplified, that there's not two people in every role, that there's not two people all the way through feeding back to another two people, feeding back to another two people. We need one, down to the manager. Then he's got his coaches. Then he's got his playing staff. Too many people causes too many indecisive moments, too many people trying to make decisions, or too many people with views. And that's where I've got an issue. And Dan Knight's saying it here. We don't need two sporting directors, and we don't. That's caused a huge issue. Sam says, in my opinion, I think none needs to go. They just need to sort out the boardroom issues and come to an agreement on. Look, I'll be honest, that's not going to happen. I don't see them being set here because there's too much money involved and there's too many investors in either ear saying, look, we need to be winning because we know that's how this club makes money. And there's people in EGHBALI's ear going, actually, keep doing what you're doing. Buy players cheap, sell them on, because that's actually adding a few million here and there. Keep doing that. That's why they're never going to agree, because one's promised their owners they're going to have a global leader and brand in world football, and that'll be Todd BOEHLY, because he's done it with the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers are a global brand. I see people wearing their merch everywhere that don't even follow baseball. That's their idea with Chelsea. I think the way Todd BOEHLY cared, the way Todd BOEHLY wanted to do the right thing he ended up being the wrong thing, but he was trying to help by being the sporting director. He knew he could make the phone calls, get to know what's going on, be hands-on. Ultimately, it turned out that it didn't go perfect, but at least he tried. EGHBALI, come on. What's this guy done? Every time I see him, he looks sour. He looks like he doesn't care. Todd BOEHLY, at least he rocked up in merch, looked like he'd been in the mega store and made it look like he cared about the club, wanted to grow the brand, speaks out in public about it. EGHBALI has quite obviously decided and is actually quoted for saying that he'd rather treat Chelsea like Brighton than treat it as a global brand and leader like Todd BOEHLY wants Chelsea to be. And for me, I know that Chelsea should be a leader in world football because for the last 20 years, the club has grown to a size and has the trophies and evidence there to suggest that it was on an upwards trajectory. And it's been messed about with. And I think Todd understands that you bring in these players that aren't of a level, they don't win. And for me, I'm genuinely concerned if EGHBALI and his team buy out Todd BOEHLY. And I think Todd might go, do you know what? I've messed up dealing with Clearlake. They can have Chelsea. I'll go and buy another club. You might get on the phone to Jim Ratcliffe. They go and buy Man United, buy out the Glazers. And that's my worry. I know that EGHBALI is so focused on anything but winning, anything but this club being super successful. And I think as fans, you know what? BOEHLY's made some mistakes, but I genuinely think he could be forgiven if he was able to move Chelsea back in the right direction. Look, if it went horribly wrong, we'd have to say, look, Todd, you got to get someone else in that knows what they're doing. But I think BOEHLY understands that winning is important to being able to bring in and the financials that he expects Chelsea to, the results that the fans want, and ultimately growing this brand to a point that in 10, 20 years' time, his couple of billion that he spent is worth more than that, double, triple, because that's apparently what he's done with the Dodgers. He bought them for 2 billion and apparently they're up to 6 billion. So BOEHLY can sell his shares to Clearlake and Clearlake only, is what I've heard. So ultimately, what would happen is Clearlake would have to buy Todd BOEHLY out, probably with investors' money that they've got. And the same with BOEHLY. If BOEHLY wants to buy out Clearlake Capital, BOEHLY will have to generate the money from other investors. They give it to him. He quotes it as his own money and buys out Chelsea. And then obviously, these guys, what they do is they're living off of everyone else's money. They take a big cut, obviously, but they're managing everyone else's money. And they will make all these other investors profit by growing the football club more successfully. I can tell you right now, I'm not a genius, by the way, but if you want to grow and make the difference in money that Todd BOEHLY's spoken about, we're talking billions, by the way, multiple billions, 1, 2, 3, 4 billions pounds worth of growth, you 100% have to have a football club that is harmonious and winning. And if it isn't, that will not happen. So for this split between the owners, it needs to get sorted quickly because neither want to be in this situation, going back to their investors saying, look, all this money that we've spent and all this money of yours that I'm using to put into Chelsea, Chelsea's in a bad way. Like, we can't get him out. He can't get us out. It's in a bad way. Todd BOEHLY, the only way he does it is turn around to Clearlake and say, look, here's an offer so good, you can't turn it down. I want Chelsea. I like this club. I like what it's about. I like what the fans want it to be. And here's your money to give back to investors and go and buy Brighton. You know what I mean? Go and buy Brighton and be the mid-table club. But Chelsea's not here. And basically what Todd's going to have to do is basically stand up for Chelsea and what it is as a club and its DNA and his beliefs. Or he can turn around and say, it's too much stress for me. I'm gone. I'm on Todd BOEHLY's side, reluctantly, like I said, because I don't think either's done enough, but I'm willing to give Todd a second chance. I'm very reluctant to give EGHBALI a first chance, let alone a potential second, because I just think that what I've seen from Clearlake and that side of things, just doesn't suit Chelsea. I think if we had an American businessman and he made Chelsea this global brand, I could see that being okay. If he wanted to go and sign like the Ronaldos of yesteryear or someone on a level to Haaland or Mbappe and put millions of pounds behind that, I'll get behind that. But if EGHBALI wants to go and sign all these young players who no one knows about and sell them off, they've never played for the club for a £5 million profit, I'm not interested. Gabriel, or whatever his name was, Angelo, I don't care. He never played for Chelsea. I don't care what level he's ever going to get to. Because when it comes to Chelsea, it means nothing to me. People can tell me he's the next best winger to come out of South America. But until he does it on the pitch for Chelsea and starts winning us trophies, I couldn't care less. And that's where I've got an issue with EGHBALI's approach, is that he don't care either. But he cares that he just made 5 million off of a player that's never played for his club. And I don't like that. And I don't know who's responsible for treating players in the way that Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah's been treated. And I think they probably have both decided to do that, and that's part of their plan. I don't like that, and I wish that to be addressed. But right now, there's bigger issues at Chelsea, and there's big issues between this ownership. Roman, look, I'm not going to say much on that, but I think we all know what I think and what most Chelsea fans think. On a good note, our squad this season is, well, look, our squad is in a good place, but it's not in the best place it can be. And I think ultimately, right, here we go. Let's see what you're saying, Dills. EGHBALI and Feliciano, their clear plan is not to win and to get into top 4. Their plan is for them to get money in their pockets. Look, Todd Boney's plan is that as well. But Todd Boney understands that winning makes that happen far easier. You know, if your club isn't winning, the money that club is... I'll tell you right now, yeah, that I genuinely believe Chelsea is worth less money now than what it was under Roman Abramovich. I don't think it will be, but I think if Roman wasn't forced to sell Chelsea, he would have held out for more money. I think that's absolutely... You know, like the Glazers weren't forced to sell Manchester United and they were holding out for huge amounts of money. And they ended up selling a small bit of it for like over $1 billion, I think, to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I think Roman would have done the same. And I think Chelsea was ultimately worth more than what it sold for. But because he was forced to sell, it decreased the value of it a little bit. I think now Chelsea's far less attractive than what it was. It was a year after winning the Champions League. Chelsea aren't even in Champions League anymore. I think Chelsea's far less attractive than what it was, even though they'll suggest that it isn't. And if they buy between each other, they'll have to pay a premium. To an outside investor, I think they'd be trying to undercut and say, look, you've done that club over in 3 years. That ain't worth... You've knocked 500 million off the price. I genuinely think that is a reality right now. I don't think Chelsea's worth or as attractive as it hasn't attracted a front of shirt sponsor that's legitimate for the last 2 years. People are saying Infinite Athlete is, but come on, like, are they? And I know they're not the only club in world football that have attracted front of shirt sponsors that are questionable, but I can tell you right now that 3, Samsung, Yokohama Tires, Fly Emirates, they're massive brands. That's who should be on the front of Chelsea's shirt. So ultimately, everything that's happened under this ownership for the past 3 years has pretty much been a negative. There are very few positives to take out of this, I think, personally, because Chelsea had so many positives so often under the previous ownership that also, when there was as much success on the pitch as there was, and we had the players there that we had a connection to, we didn't scrutinise it as much because we can't just get on with it. There's huge issues here for me. Gab says, I think they overpaid for CFC. If anything, our stadium is the main issue that prevents us being bigger in terms of revenue. I do hear that, but success, not getting into the Champions League and not finishing in the top 4 of the Premier League definitely hinders a club financially. Definitely does. Yeah, I think one would. I think maybe both and a new one comes in. If you look at our squad name, the players that are meant to be signed, I don't quite know what you mean on that one, Dills, but I think you mean that Chelsea should be attracting the best of the best. I definitely think they should. Guys, we've got quite a few people in here. If you haven't already, make sure to smash the likes. We're trying to hit 20 likes, 25 likes on this one. We can definitely make that happen. Ultimately, if you're Todd Boehly in and you want Todd Boehly to be the guy who gets the control of Chelsea Football Club, smash a like. And if you want EGHBALI and you disagree with me, smash a like and tell me why. Because I want to know why people feel like EGHBALI's the right choice. Because the majority of people I speak to genuinely don't seem to fancy EGHBALI. I've heard very few amount of people tell me that he's the right option. EGHBALI would suit Spurs? Probably. I can see that. I think that's a good point. Not every players we have should be big names, but what went wrong with Scott? Yeah. I agree, right? I think the squad planning is just a bit all over the place. I'm absolutely baffled, like I've said so many times with this Chelsea squad, that I am baffled with how it's been assembled. I am baffled that anyone thought this was the right idea at purchasing a club at the level of Chelsea. You know, they could have saved themselves money by buying themselves a Brighton, or go and buy a Leeds, or, you know, a team that has the potential to be massive, but also wouldn't mind this player turnover and players coming out of nowhere. I just think they've bought the wrong club. Clearly, obviously had this idea of getting into football, or they weren't aware of the Brighton model until they got into football, until they started speaking to Paul Witt-Stanley. And anyone that says Brighton win nearly as much, comparing them to Chelsea, is delusional, unless you're speaking about post Roman Abramovich era at Chelsea, which should never have been the case. Chelsea, why can't they realise that their ownership is an anomaly in the last 25 years at Chelsea? Chelsea have always, look, Brighton were like maybe even in that ownership of Roman Abramovich, a League One club. To suggest that they win similar amounts to Chelsea is crazy. I don't know if that quote sort of takes the whole interview out of context, but I can't find it. And I've seen people stating this stuff, but this is the point. You want better? I agree. EGHBALI and Clearlake are the bad guys. Boehly is the daft guy. I agree. I kind of think that Boehly was a bit daft, but I feel like Todd Boehly had better intentions. I feel like Todd Boehly wanted the best for the club. I feel like he wanted to get hands-on, learn the sport, and try and grow Chelsea in a way that he saw possible. And he wanted to get that happening straight away. He wanted to help out Tuchel. He knew things weren't in place. He knew the previous ownership model had sort of been ripped up because he was doing it. And he knew that things had to change a little bit. But he still wanted to sign. Look, no one thought Koulibaly was going to be the flop that he was. We were all quite excited when Koulibaly come. Even John Terry, the fact that he gave him his number. We all thought Raheem Sterling was a good signing. We actually thought it was good value for money. We all thought that Cucurella, the player of the season at Brighton, wasn't a bad buy. We all felt that making Reece James captain was the perfect thing to do. We all thought that Enzo Fernandez was going to be a world beater because of the World Cup that he had. Unfortunately, a lot of that doesn't ring true. And ultimately, when you look at it, some of the signings that I guarantee EGHBALI has had more of an impact on, because they were potential profits and then they've excelled, they've actually done better. And that is football. But when you look at the big issue they made was all those signings might have worked under Tuchel. They might have. Maybe not. Maybe a few of them would have still gone wrong. But Tuchel sold those guys the club. Tuchel had just won the Champions League, was pushing to try and win himself a Premier League title for Chelsea. He loved the club. They saw that he loved Chelsea and he felt this connection to it that no one else had, right? That he didn't have anywhere else. And they sacked Tuchel too quickly, in my opinion, because for what had happened under Tuchel, Chelsea have never even got close to the level of where we were. You know, when we sacked Tuchel, we were fourth. We've barely been close to that level since he left. And I know it wasn't great. And I know there was a lot of stuff happening off the pitch, on the pitch. I remember that game against Leeds. It was atrocious. The game against Zagreb, it weren't very good. That's why he got sacked. But ultimately, to then replace Tuchel with what they did, just every single player that had just come in, like your Raheem Sterling, like your Koulibaly, when Graham Potter walked through the door, they probably went, what have we done? Why have we signed for this club? Why have they appointed this manager? This isn't the right guy for Chelsea. He just doesn't fit the profile. And ultimately, since then, it's just spiraled out of control. And then I think Pochettino felt like a step in the right direction. And it almost feels like it's gone. Tuchel's gone. Then they've gone for like this process manager, project manager, because that's one argument. Then he's gone, and then they're like, oh, actually, no, let's go back to how we were. We're going to sign the best managers that are available. Let's get Poch. So they hired Poch. And then they're like, oh, actually, no, we should go back to the project. And because there's too many people pulling in too many different directions, one wants the project, one wants the success now, that you end up with an absolute clusterfuck of opinions, and no one knows what is the right thing to do. We're still, and now we're still hurting for all of these mess ups because we're still paying these managers. We're still paying a stupid amount of money. The one thing I will say is Pochettino's just been announced today as the USA men's national team coach. I think it kind of says that by taking that job, it probably proves that he just wasn't good enough for to be Chelsea manager. Whether it was the right thing to keep him in or not, actually, when you look at it, if his next job after Chelsea is the US men's national team, it suggests that he wasn't good enough. You know, maybe he's had enough. If he wants a cushy job to go and live in America, that Poch taking that US men's national team job, seriously, that is like that's like moving to the MLS for retirement as a player. That's what that feels like to me. And it proves that Poch wasn't good enough. However we dress it up, he didn't do a good enough job at Chelsea for what he was required to do. But then Potter and Maresca, wow, I mean, they are even more confusing to me than Pochettino. At least Pochettino had this CV to back it up. You know, people said at the time Pochettino was good enough for the Man United job, was good enough for PSG, got to Champions League finals, hadn't won a lot, but he was always on the brink of doing so. Him taking that MLS job gives me question marks that his heart was ever fully in it at Chelsea, because unless the situation at Chelsea has just killed his feelings towards football. Sounds like Bodie put in a good word for his friend. Maybe, by the way, maybe we're not even thinking about that, but maybe he did. Maresca has more balls than yeah, he does. But tactically, I haven't seen enough from Maresca yet. I want to see more. So look, guys, give me your thoughts, because I personally think it's got to be a BOEHLY in situation. I think that with a lot of reluctancy. I don't want to see EGHBALI. I don't want to see. Sorry, guys, that's just that love. I don't want to see EGHBALI having the control that he may potentially get under full ownership, which would worry me. And by the way, I do know that he isn't the only person at Clear Lake. There's Feliciano and there's a couple of others that are obviously involved. But I genuinely think that at the hands of EGHBALI, Chelsea Football Club will look even more removed from what it once was. Don't get me wrong. Under Todd BOEHLY, the club will be globalized and Americanized. I could probably live with that if he's signing the biggest stars and giving us a better opportunity to win. I genuinely think EGHBALI comes in for a while. I think we kiss goodbye to trophies. I really do. And do you know what, right? I have to say this. I'm only guessing on what we think we've seen. And the majority of people and journalists have reported of how each owner sort of views the club's direction and where it should head. But actually, we really don't know what the right thing is. We really don't know whether or not EGHBALI's been acting in this way. Todd BOEHLY's been acting in this way. Todd BOEHLY's spoken about it in public. EGHBALI really hasn't. And I think they need to come out more. They need to come out and speak regarding this situation. Regarding Stamford Bridge, right? Because we'll move on to that, because I want to speak about that a little bit as well. Where are people at with Stamford Bridge? Look, I don't know how many people in this chat have ever had the opportunity to go to Stamford Bridge. I don't know how many people are have been to England to watch Chelsea, but it doesn't mean you're not a fan, right? And you understand what Stamford Bridge has added to Chelsea in years gone by. Do you think we should be staying at Stamford Bridge or not? Because I'm incredibly torn. And I think I could have been swayed a little bit easier had things been okay, like I stated earlier. But right now, I absolutely can't see a future and a positive in Chelsea leaving Stamford Bridge. I think Stamford Bridge has to be redeveloped 100% once the ownership is sorted out. But until we start winning, I won't even hear a discussion about Chelsea moving to a different ground, because ultimately we shouldn't be leaving Stamford Bridge when every other identity at this club has been stripped away from us. Any connection from the fans has been stripped away. Are you Stamford Bridge, or are you Earls Court, or a new ground? Let me know. This is facts. What makes everyone think that BOEHLY is successful in buying Clearlake shares with the new investors, that the same thing won't happen again? I think, I'll be honest, right? This is a good point, because a couple of people asked me this question as well. I think the way Todd BOEHLY has spoken and what he's achieved and done for his other sporting brands suggests to me that it will move in a slightly better direction. The players and the direction that EGHBALI looks to be heading in don't fill me with a lot of confidence. And unless EGHBALI comes out and says, look, I want Chelsea to be at this level, and he tells us and we believe him, I can only take what I hear from the horse's mouth of Todd BOEHLY and take that as gospel. Todd BOEHLY understands what bringing in world-class talent does financially, and in terms of results, and in terms of building connection with the fans and growing the brand. And I think they're all things that need to be addressed. And I don't know if EGHBALI's going to do that. I really don't. EGHBALI sees the 5 millions quickly, quick cash, keep turning over, keep making a profit, give it back to the investors, get a bit more, grow his finances and stuff. That's where he's at. Ben says BOEHLY seems like the lesser of two evils. I have to agree. I think that's a good way to put it. I want us to stay at the Bridge. We have a big historic night. So this is it, man. Right now, this is the only connection. I sit there in the stand that I've sat forever, and all those moments come flooding back. I look up at the shed end where I sat the day we beat Manchester United, and I picture myself 11 years old, screaming. I couldn't believe it when Joe Cole scored that goal. I couldn't believe it when we won the league for a second time in a row. I remember being there with my dad and my brother, and it was unbelievable. And their memories I hold forever. Our best ever player from so many of the older generation is buried under the Stamford Bridge pitch. There are statues obviously outside. There are meeting points around the ground. There are pubs that people hold dear to Stamford Bridge and its location. There's iconic moments and memories attached to that ground. And with the club in the state that it's in right now, I don't think Chelsea can afford to take those away from the fans as well. And ultimately, I think if they attempt it like they did in 2013, they will feel the full wrath of the Chelsea Pitch Owners Association. Chelsea Pitch Owners, sorry. They organisation, association, whatever that is, they're shareholders of the Chelsea name, the Chelsea pitch, and the centre circle. And they will stand up like they did before. I absolutely believe that. And probably more so. Roman probably had better odds. Right now, I don't see the CPO letting Chelsea go. I think they understand, and they have a very similar view to me in the terms of right now and forever, really. Whereas I was probably a little bit more looser on that. If things were okay, I understood what a stadium does to a team that are trying to move forward with the times. But ultimately, I think you stay at Stamford Bridge, you redevelop it to a 60,000 seater, if possible, like Roman had plans to do. And that is exactly it. And that's what you do. If the pitch owners don't work with the owners, expect to... Oh, of course. Of course they will. If the pitch owners say, do one, these owners will treat the fans like shite. I'll tell you that rather. Of course they will, because they already do. But you know what? If they do that and we keep Chelsea and we ride the storm out, and maybe in a few years some big investor comes along and decides that Chelsea's an opportunity because it's a sleeping giant, because they haven't won anything in 10 years under the Feliciano, EGHBALI, Clear Lake ownership, then okay. And you know what? If Todd BOEHLY comes in and just focuses on getting the team back to being a team that are capable of winning things, and then in due course eventually decides to try and make something happen with the stadium, then we can talk about it. But right now, I absolutely don't see a future where Chelsea leaves Stamford Bridge being beneficial to anyone bar owners. But if they do, by the way, if they do somehow do it, they will lose the name. That 100% they will lose the name. Both Clearlake and BOEHLY out. We need owners that actually care and want to invest our club and come up with transfer policies that make sense. I think this would be the best possible outcome. Unfortunately, there is no way of this happening, at least for like the next 10 years. I'm not, look, I'll be honest. I'm not sure that BOEHLY does. I'm not sure that he does either. I don't think either of them do. But ultimately, Earls Court have said that Chelsea aren't in contact and it is potentially fake news. I think there's more chance, though, of... I actually don't. I actually think, but I'll be honest, I think both owners actually hate the idea of having to stay at Stamford Bridge. I think they both hate it. I really do. I think they just want a massive Americanized style stadium built somewhere in London. And they don't really care. As long as it has... The most damaging thing to them will be losing Chelsea, being able to play as Chelsea. That would be the most damaging thing to them if they have to redevelop it. Because, you know what, in America, people might care and they might become like the new Milton Keynes. But look at how that works in the long run. There's no connection. I'll tell you right now, yeah, that if they go, 40,000 Chelsea fans, I say that, let's say 30,000 Chelsea fans will rock up to watch Chelsea play in League Two, non-league football. They will. They absolutely will. Because they care about the club. They care about what it is. And I know that sounds ludicrous, but if that's what happens and Chelsea have to start again like AFC Wimbledon, Chelsea fans will be there. They will. They'll be there. Why isn't any match... Do you know what, Stephen? This is a really good point. And I was speaking about this to someone the other day. They are protesting it, right? I go to games. Other people I know in this chat, they go to games. Other people who I speak to online, they go to games. They're not sure about the ownership. They are protesting it as well, albeit it's not super vocal at the moment, but they have, and they've said what they thought about Todd BOEHLY as well. I've been there last season at Brentford. It got incredibly toxic. I heard chants towards Todd BOEHLY because BOEHLY then was the front man. BOEHLY had put himself in the firing line. However, it's come to light that actually BOEHLY's been removed for a little bit, and EGHBALI is the person that seems to be in more of a controlling seat at the moment with what's happening. But they are. However, this news is broken when we don't have a home game for pretty much 20 odd days since the news broke. It's perfect timing. It's international break and then another 20 days till a home game. It's the best part of a month where they won't have to face the wrath of the fans. And then hopefully by then it's quieting down a little bit. Don't be surprised if we see something at that first game. But it's a League Cup night. So they've been really smart. The actual season ticket holders, match-going fans aren't going to have a game for pretty much a month whilst all this news is breaking. Well, Undertaker, this is something I'm not sure on. Yes, they did have to spend that £1 billion investment to potentially be able to sell the club. I don't know whether or not that's going to happen. Do you know what? Right, I would take that if that's guaranteed true, which I really don't know if it is. I'd take that in a heartbeat, an absolute heartbeat. I want to see uh, the back of Clearlake and Todd Boehly more than I want to see either of them stay, because I think they've just been atrocious for 3 years. I really don't think there's too many. Like, can anyone mention the positives that are here on the back? Yeah, I agree. I think that will happen. Can anyone agree or state the positives that we think has happened under this current ownership and an improvement on where we were previously? Because I sit here right now, I don't know. I don't know hardly. I don't know if I can sit here and say there's positives. What has happened that is an improvement and made Chelsea better off than what it was? Because I have no idea. And I'll sit here and I'll wait for someone to tell me, because I'm really trying to think off the top of my head what is an improvement. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure to smash the like. We are trying to get 25 likes on today's stream. We're nearly there. There's loads of you tuning in. We're on the road to 3,000 subs before Christmas on this channel. It's been an unbelievable journey. Yes, it's been topsy-turvy. Yes, it's a quiet international break, but I appreciate every single one of you joining in right now. And if you haven't already, make sure to smash that like. I think we're 1 away from 20 right now, so we're not too far off. If everyone in here just smashed the likes, we could easily do that. Realistically, on today's stream, we could hit 50, but right now, 25 is the goal. All the positive vibes can be found at Football Therapy. Do you know what? I haven't seen too much of that, Stephen, to be honest with you. I just don't see too many improvements. I'm failing and struggling to see the positives that this ownership model has brought to Chelsea. And I ultimately don't get what they've offered to us. What the promises that they failed to deliver on are so obviously there. They said judge them in 4 windows. We can judge them now. And isn't it funny, after the 4th window just ends, what is it? Like, probably in the same amount of time that Tuchel was sacked, this news is breaking a couple of seasons down the line, exactly the same time. It's like they've had their 4 windows since that Tuchel window. Now they can be judged, and they've realised that it's really not gone very well. Judge them now. Judge which one you think might be better for the club. Ben Jacobs said it was true. Well, then, I'll put the club up for sale. Get on the phone to Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? Let's do this again. Why not? Why not? Guys, I don't know how to put a poll in the chat. Can I do it? I don't know how you do it, guys. Start a poll. Here we go. Right. Okay, I'm doing a poll. I need you guys to answer this for me, right? Okay, here we go. Clear Lake or Bode? I don't know if I'm spelling it right. Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to put a poll in the chat. Never done one before. So let me know, right? New owners, Clear Lake or BOEHLY, or new owner process again. Vote in that now if you haven't. It's on the chat. I want to know your thoughts. And whilst you're doing it, if you haven't, smash a like, because we've actually nearly hit 25, which is great. I want to know your thoughts. Do you think we go with new owners and go through that whole process again? Or do we go with one of Clear Lake or BOEHLY? Because I don't think there's a possibility that they stay together. I really don't. So let me know your thoughts, because I genuinely think that the best and most beneficial thing for I've got fluff here somewhere. The most beneficial thing would be to absolutely try it again and just call this one a failure and write it off. If it's true, like Undertaker said, that Ben Jacobs said yesterday, it's true, we can get new owners, this would be unbelievable. I'd be very, very happy with this. Very, very happy. Dan says, how are Chelsea fans still accepting this? Sorry. I think they're at breaking point, Dan. I really do. 4 windows, still haven't got a number 9. Unacceptable, isn't it? I completely agree. Could all of this be PR to sell the club? Stephen, maybe. But what I will say is that I don't think, if they want to sell the club, unless they're happy to cut their losses, I think they want to sell the club when it's in the best light possible. And right now, I don't think it is. And I think they'll lose money. Dan says, yeah, we've got one running. New ownership, new process. Stephen, you're right. Bring me Saudi Arabia ownership. I think there's something to be said about that. I feel like the way I've seen them act around Newcastle says to me that there's potential positives on field around that. Do you know what? If we get someone that is, don't get me wrong, if we get someone that isn't Saudi Arabian and there's a consortium, which I always think is a bit of an issue, or you get American owners and they understand that winning helps. Look, all these owners, I think 9 times out of 10 are going to have an interest in making money and generating money. I think it's very rare. We were so blessed with Roman Abramovich. I think it's incredibly rare for these owners to be in a position that Roman's in, that you're probably not going to find that. And I think so many people view the Premier League as an opportunity right now of making money. They're going to want to do it, yeah. They're going to want to be involved in a potential opportunity that is as big as the Premier League to absolutely boom. Because, by the way, football in America is still not massive. I think they believe that the Club World Cup and the World Cup in America is going to send football to the top, like up there with baseball, NFL, NBA. I think they believe it's going to do something similar. But ultimately, it won't be the MLS. The MLS will thrive because of that. But the Premier League and the Champions League and the FIFA Club World Cup is where it will be at. And that attention from America will be there. And they understand that they can absolutely grow football with those connections. I just think they won't sell the club. They want it for themselves. They're going to be greedy, guys. They are. But I would definitely take the owners, new owners, 100%. Anyone, by the way, I don't think it has to be a Saudi Arabian owner, is what I'm trying to say. I want an owner that comes in, and I do believe that it isn't hard for the grass to be greener in this situation. I really do. Bring back the Saudi media shake. Yeah, well, go on then. Yeah, come back. New owners all the way. Done with, when Rome wants to get Chelsea up for sale, prayed it. Look, it's not been great, and I genuinely think it's kind of harsh to brush them all with the same, to paint them all with the same brush. But Gary Neville kind of did. And everyone was like, oh, no, come on, Gary. It's just because you've had the Glazers, blah, 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 blah. Look, Liverpool have had some stinkers over the years. Chelsea now as well. We haven't got... It's harsh, but we haven't got the best. I feel harsh slating BOEHLY in that manner because I think he tried and I think he's been ambitious. I just think it's gone horribly wrong so far. For Chelsea to be so far removed from where they were is such a problem. Such a problem, guys. It really, really is. So ultimately, I think we would all say that we've probably lost patience with this ownership right here. Just wait. If the results stay pretty bad on the pitch, there will be uproar. Whilst this is going on, there will be uproar. There really will be. I really don't expect to see too many people being happy with this ownership and what it's offered. I really, really don't. So let's see. Let's see with that one and what happens. Because only time will tell. Only time will tell. It's a long process. It's going to be brutal, I think, between the two ownerships. I personally don't expect a new person, an outside source to come in. I probably expect a deal to be done between the two parties. My preference, and I think as Chelsea fans, we have the responsibility to make our voices heard. And I think we have to understand that if we want something like we did before, when one of the buyers was potentially going to come in and we really didn't want them, we ultimately have to understand that our voices can be heard. I can't quite remember the guy's name. I'm trying to think of it. I don't know. Someone might be able to tell me who it was that was going to come in, and then we ended up not wanting him, and it become Chelsea fans saying we didn't want this guy. Uh, uh, I'm going to try and look. But what I'm saying is, it's on us. Mass product. Does anyone remember Ricketts? Oh, Robert, you're a legend, mate. It was Rick. We didn't want Ricketts, and that was exactly it. And we need to do the same. If we believe that we don't want one side of this ownership, and we believe that one might be better than the other, and I urge everyone to go and do their research, because as much as I can sit here and talk and say, oh, I've done a little bit of research. There's not a lot of evidence out there, is what I'll say. But if you've got a gut feeling, and I kind of think in football, you trust your gut. And if we get it wrong, we get it wrong. But if you feel like someone isn't good for this club, you need to make your voice heard, whether that's on social media, whether that's in YouTube chats, whether that is in the pub with your mates, or if you go to school or wherever you are, you need to make your voice heard. And I think you need to project that so that someone somewhere is aware. Because imagine Todd Bowley's thinking, is it worth me going to try and get another 2.5 billion, which is a stupid amount of money, to try and buy out Clear Lake? Is it worth me doing that? If he hears the fans saying Clear Lake out and they want Bowley's Blues, right, he might just go and do it. If he doesn't hear any support and everyone's like, oh, they're both rubbish, which I think they are. But if that's the murmur that's coming out, he won't be bothered if he leaves, and he won't care if EGHBALI gets it. And it sounds like Clear Lake, EGHBALI, Feliciano, they're going to be quite stubborn in leaving. And I think this is why, if you do have a side, I think you really yeah, they did. I think you really should make your voice heard, whether that's protesting, whether that's at the ground, whether that's in your friendship group or who you speak to about Chelsea. I think you should make your opinion heard, and you should say, this is what I believe. And if you've done your research and you've got valid points, make it known, because this is important. This is the future of Chelsea Football Club, and we've had a rubbish 3 years. And if we want it to change and we want it to improve and we want it to get back towards where it was, we absolutely need to be speaking up and saying, this is the direction we want our club to head in. And look, if we get it wrong, but one side failed to speak up and failed to say anything, and we never knew what they really wanted, that's their fault. That's not us as fans, because neither side has been good enough to us as fans and spoke up and said what they're about. And I think they do. But I genuinely think that we are in danger of this happening. I really do. And the only way we have any chance of that not happening is to speak up and show to Bowley and his investors that actually Chelsea fans are willing to give him a second chance and get behind him, if that's how you believe. Or if you believe that Bowley isn't good for this club and he should go as well, and you'd rather have Clear Lake in charge, then you need to do the same. I'm not here to sway your decision. What I will say is, though, do your research and hopefully try and base your opinion on that. But yeah, it's going to be difficult times. I really do think that. I think it's going to be tough on the pitch. I think we're going to see this going on for a while. I heard they wanted to be done by November. I don't see that happening. So let's see what happens. I'm wrapping this one up now, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to every single one of you. We've managed to smash 25 likes. I've enjoyed speaking to all of you. Fingers crossed, we can just sort of forget about all of this when it comes to the weekend against Bournemouth and we have a great game and we just get back to playing football, because the international break has bored me to death. I will say congratulations to Harry Kane for reaching the milestone that he's done. It's a fantastic achievement. He's been a good servant to English football, but I need the Premier League back right now. I really do. And I need Chelsea to be going to Bournemouth and putting a couple of goals past them. And it just kind of lets us forget about all this. Like I said, if you go into the game, make your voice heard. I know there's only about 1,200 people able to go down. If you're in chats on YouTube and social media, make sure to let people know what you think, because that's what this is all about, opinions at the end of the day. But it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to all of you guys. A few people I'm going to highlight. Clear Lake should be sacked ASAP because he doesn't care about winning. I will be. New owners, please, had enough of these clowns. It's a late, my voice is going. It's a late kickoff for Bournemouth, by the way. I think we got an 8 o'clock kickoff. BOEHLY said we'll beat 3-0. And Madrid. What about Madrid, Steve? I'm not sure. Anyway, have a good one, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I will be back. I'll be back in the build-up towards the Bournemouth game for sure. The international break is done. We've got about a month until the next one, so we'll squeeze in as much decent footballing chat as we can. And if you haven't already, I strongly advise you to head over to Twitter and put the hashtag Barclays Men into the search bar, and you will have a nostalgia trip of your life. There is some unbelievable compilations there that need to be watched. But if you haven't already, smash a like in the hope that Chelsea have a massive win against Bournemouth, and smash a like in the hope that this ownership issue, civil war, all gets resolved and we end up with the right person for the job. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're on the road to 3,000, and I will catch you in the next one. It's been